Great. John, really appreciate you being here. Most people have no idea that the financial stress their employees carry into work every single day is quietly killing their company's productivity. And that's the problem wealthy planning was built to solve. Through their AI assistant, Abby, they're giving middle class families access to institutional grade financial planning for the first time. John, you've built something genuinely important here. And but before we get to the mind and mission behind this product, I would love to hear more about Wealthy Planet and Abby from your in your own words.
Yeah, so thank you for having me, first and foremost. And so I began life with the Canadian Armed Forces. I was an Army medic, combat medic, and totally got taken advantage of by a financial planner and lost at that time my down payment for my first house. And so I went into research mode. I'm a little older, so pre-Google, every third-party legitimate book in the library I took to heart, read. Began a career in financial services, went from a salesperson to a branch manager to senior vice president. Was very privileged to work with a great company that, through its parent, made multiple acquisitions and had a great opportunity owning stock, discounted, and then in '05, after I'd left that company previously, I started to build software and started to really see the impact. And so, at a previous company that I created, saw the future pre-AI and what things could be. And so, a big factor of mine has been debt optimization. And so, right now in Canada, Canadians spend $1.77 every dollar they earn. The U.S. is pretty much up there too. And so, the mass, I'd say like 90% of the mass market out there, 10 to 15% of the lower hanging fruit, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There is no money to plan with, right? I mean, this is a food bank perspective and the issues that surround those people. But the core, and then if you consider 10% are going to be working with with the investment banking firms, the wealth management firms, everybody else out there is kind of like rolling their dice in Vegas, right? The house is always going to win. Even if you had Abby and you didn't have the right products, the odds are you'd still fail. And this is where, we really come in and to ensure that you're doing the right things. So my dream has been in a situation where we can leverage out of the financial planner. And I say that without being disrespectful, but at the end of the day, what a financial planner does is pretty simple.
Hmm.
You do an info and data uptake, you put it into some software, either it's built by your company or it's third party on a SaaS model. You show them the outputs and then you recommend products that pay you, right? And I don't care if that's a discretionary fee or that's commissions on insurances or management expense ratios, whatever, right? That guy's getting paid or that gal's getting paid. The the issue here is that the consumer has no understanding of what that means long term and as far as compounding values. And the real issue of truly having a non-biased. I got to share a fast story. So one of the largest pension fund administrator out there today contacted us about a few weeks ago. I'm under NDA, so I can't really talk about it. So this director, the Canadian sector of this company, and this company's got like 40,000 people. So, you can only guess it's got to be one of three. And so it comes to me, he's like, we have been looking, me and two other of our associates have been looking for a non-biased program for the wellness sector for 2 years now. And I'm like, I'm shocked, right? And I said, well, how did you find us? He goes, well, we finally found you on Gemini Copilot. You came up, and man, they booked a demo right away, and then we did an RFI, and now we're going to be linked to them in the wellness sector. So it just blew my mind that when you think about it in the B2B space, and you were right, Canada costs us $60 billion in productivity because of financial stress. In the US, it's over $600 billion. I don't have an actual number for the UK as I speak to you right now, but that can quickly go to a large language model and find that out in a moment. But the reality is it's causing lack of sleep. It's causing 2 to 4 hours a day in research and looking and it's the nuances of financial plans that people don't have answers to. Like there's no financial operating system out there. Everything is linear and based on either creating retirement wealth or doing specific things that that project, earnings for the financial planner. And again, if you're a happy consumer dealing with that, but you need to know the difference. And that's why Abby's based upon, first off, priorities, not goals.
Mm-hmm.
And a priority is like, think of it as a survival priority financially. What makes you happy that you can't live without, right? Buying a house, kids' education. What specifically makes you happy? So maybe as a guy, it's golf, right? But you prioritize it over other things. Then what Abby does is use like a Monte Carlo tree variant formula that's our IP, and we run multiple simulations. And then we find the process in which you're going to achieve the highest level of those priorities being worked with. And then what happens is on the outputs, we show you how it's working. So Abby's automatically debt optimized. So we're going to give you a plan to get out of debt. You can't earn 6 or 8% in a growth, managed portfolio and then being paid 16, 18% or over that. Just mathematically is not sound. So she's going to say, get rid of the debt first. And we have both a debt program for secured and a debt for unsecured. And we'll give you that plan. And then, retirement's an automatic also, so you don't have to make retirement. But we use retirement as in today's dollar values. If you retire today, your debt's been eliminated, your house is probably paid off. What percentage of your income offsetting either, defined pension or defined contributions, because we have both running, what will you be happy with at retirement? And why is this important? Because this is all predictive learning. And as your data changes into Abby, the predictor side changes, right? The simulations changes.
Yeah.
So then we put 2 hybrids of technology on our stack. One's called the Decision Hub, and that is for everyday life decisions. Can I afford this thing that happened to me? Or if I have to finance this thing happen to me, so new roof, whatever it is, we have a module for purchasing a car. You put 4 different vehicles in there and their payments, either lease payment or purchase payment. And how does this affect, number one, your priorities? Because you said that you're emotionally attached and these are priorities. And then finally, retirement. And because I don't believe a vehicle defines you. And so I think it's important that you know what a vehicle will cost you over time. Can I buy a house? What's the right type of risk coverage when it comes to critical illness and insurance? And how much should I have? Everything mathematically optimized for you so you have the right, information so you can make a decision. Because you're not going to call your financial planner when you need a new washer and dryer.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that appointment.
Mm-hmm.
So why isn't that out there in the marketplace, right? Because they don't have the time and it's not scalable. Being a financial planner is not scalable. I have personally managed in portfolio hundreds of millions of dollars. I had a branch that managed far over $1 billion. And there's no way humanly you as a financial planner can scale that, to having millions upon millions of customers. It just doesn't work. And then even as you go into the banking world and the wealth management world, they keep scaling back, so, about 10, 15 years ago, I met with a guy at a major bank here in Canada, and he told me, if you don't have $500,000 in this certain bank, we're putting you all into this one sector.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
How many people you have in there? He's like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have I think it was 65,000 people. I said, well, how many people are you servicing them? He says, well, it's kind of a call center related program, and there'll be 8. I went, oh, if you have a market fluctuation of 300 basis points, 3%, you're gonna have tens of thousands of people calling. There's no way you can scale and support that.
Yeah.
So that's what leads me to talking about Abby Chat. So Abby Chat, as I speak to you today, is the only chat program that has 0 hallucinations. And the reason for that is that, yes, there's a small layer used by a third party just on the conversation. But if you just say to Abby Chat, I just got a 5% pay raise, what now? Abby will come back to you and say, would you like me to create new simulations? And then you'll say yes. And then you'll go, Abby is thinking. And then Abby will come out. I'm just going to use, Canadian, if you will.
Yeah, of course.
Well, here is your registered retirement savings plan. The difference was $82,000. Or here's your TFSA, and the difference is this amount. Or here's your open accounts, different this amount. And overall, you went from achieving your priority at a 78 percentile to now an 84 percentile. And so what happened is we drilled down into the data, right? Brought that back up into the chat forum. And so the data is the data the consumer put in. So it's non-negotiable, non-hallucinating. And as you move along, and we don't have open banking, unfortunately, here in Canada. So we're behind the eight ball. But of course, the UK and the EU is ready to roll. And that's why we're excited about finding the right partner out there and doing so. But here we're able to scrape. So we're in the midst of speaking with a third party to scrape that data. And so at least once a month, the consumer will get a full scraping of all credit cards, all investments, and have an update.
Yeah.
And then we'll be able to use the chat program, be it be the SMS or
Mm.
direct to them on the site and say, hey, Shiraz, guess what? You had that budget of being part of that dart league. You said it was called 300 quid a month, and you spent 400 quid. That extra 100 quid is like 6,971 pounds
Mhm.
in the next 20 years. Do you want to change your priority, or do you want to ensure that you create the discipline that you need? Because by retirement, if you continue to do this, it's like 312,000 pounds or 2 years of retirement. And these are the things people need to know, cause and effect.
Yeah.
This is how we create it, right, in a non-biased program. You see, if you create the actual priorities,
Mhm.
then Abby's never going to be wrong because
Mhm.
they're your priorities. Our defaults, okay, you can change the defaults, but we use like 50 years of economic returns in the markets, and so we use a
Mhm.
6% default, so nothing scary. We
Mhm.
use live inflation, and and then we use live home inflation. So everything else is pretty much live. And then if you as a consumer, you did a KYC or an onboarding somewhere, and say you're more growth effective, and you would like to change that 6 to an 8 or a 9, hey, so be it.
Mhm.
You can go ahead and do that. But the most important part about the construct and the stack itself is answering day-to-day questions, right? Like I love a commercial that we wrote for when we do our Series A, which we have it both male and female, but on the ladies, it's finishing a luncheon. And, one gal says, hey, let's go shopping.
Mhm.
And the other, gal picks up her phone and says, just a moment, I need to ask Abby. She says, Abby, I'd like to go shopping. What's my budget? And Abby says, just a moment. And then it comes out, you have 400 liquid dollars. You can either pay for that $200 on your next two pay cycles or put it on X credit card and pay it off in the next two cycles and earn your arrow points. Either way, you won't be in debt longer than 1 month. And of course, the other three girls are aghast, right? Their chins drop 6 inches. And how do I get Abby,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then, vice versa, we've got three guys finishing, right, what guys do,
Mhm.
the same understanding. So just ask Abby is not just a literacy, not just an app to use. It's
Mhm.
something to use because if you make the mistakes at the granular level, they compound. Every dollar has to be optimal in your life. So if you think of Google Maps, so that's navigation at the most optimal way for you to travel. When you think of Abby as a navigation tool, and we give you the actual navigation to the plan, it says, Shiraz, at the next set of lights, make a left and put X amount into paying off your debt.
Mhm.
As you enter right the freeway, put X amount into your retirement savings plan. So everything is broken down. And then as life changes, because you might be, Shiraz 1.0, single guy. Then you're married, you're 2.0. You got kids, you're 3.0. Kids are in college, university, 4.0. Then you're planning for decumulation retirement, that's 5.0. So the actual software, if you will, has to be live to data because your life is not static. It's not linear. And this is how we created Abby. And so, I believe in the next 6 to 10 years, you're going to see a change. You're going to see hybrids.
Mhm.
And then you're going to see the mold being cracked. I believe we're the first of our kind. I don't think
I
we're going to
believe
find
so as
another
well.
one
I
in the
don't think
wellness
I've heard.
market.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we now have institutions coming to us and looking for licensing. And
Mhm.
very excited about working with one of the largest pension fund in the wellness sector, B2B. That's
Mhm.
huge for us because
Perfect.
there's an ROI for the employers. A
Yeah.
happy, focused employee is productive,
Mhm. Yeah.
and retention is everything. And then when you look at, you know, the fact that we customize to their benefit program,
Mhm.
then you can have an inflow outflow without issues, right? So you've got the older guys leaving with a full understanding of what their priorities are at retirement and able to do so. And then you've got the younger generation right into that business model, looking at the older people leaving, knowing that they're secure, knowing that they did okay, and they're retiring decently, and then you could get to move the times a lot faster. The worst thing you could have as an employer is people now stressed and people leaving stressed, and the other people are saying, well, why do I want to stay here? I was in the lunchroom with Joe. He just finished 25 years. He's retiring. Joe's screwed. Joe's unhappy. Joe's like totally freaked out about his finances. So you can see how this wellness side and this TAM is growing exponentially.
Yeah.
Because you and I both know a mass majority amount of the benefit programs out there today are kind of run via insurance companies.
Mhm.
And then they offer their own, programs after you're integrated into a benefit program. And those insurance products, they're not based upon actuarially for the best for maybe the consumer. They're based upon what makes them money. So this is a unique and different way of looking and solving the problem.
Interesting. This is, I mean, like you said, I don't think I've ever come across this, and you truly are one of a kind. And thank you for explaining in so much detail, Abby as a chatbot and Abby as a financial assistant. Um, I wanted to ask, I think I've got quite a bit of an understanding of how it works and how it's fundamentally different from everything that's out there. But one of your users mentioned that Abby helped them make a $700,000 difference in their personal financial trajectory. Can you break down how
Sure.
does that exactly work?
Sure.
How does that actually
So
happen?
yeah, so very easy understanding is that when you look at optimizing every dollar, okay, so you look at your non-discretionary spending.
Hmm.
And look, we had people on board, a young lady, professional, was very blessed to be making a great six-figure income by the time she, rounded 30. She had a drop shipment from a makeup company that was like $1,200 a month. Like she has to look great in her job, and that's what she does out there in the marketplace. And so we said, well, what happens if you cut that in half? And she admitted to us that she had boxes upon boxes upon boxes. She's just so busy traveling, doing all that she does. And she goes, yeah, I could drop that to $500 a month. And she did. So that freed up for her, right, $700 a month. And that $7 a month went to tax optimized savings, what made hundreds of thousands of dollars. Actually got to retire 9 years earlier. So that's one of the aspects, right? Optimizing your non-discretionary income. Secondly, the debt side. People do not understand the waste in interest payments. Now, in my country, it's $1.70. This just came out 2 weeks ago. It's been as high as $1.84. But with all the problematic issues in the world and oil and all that that's happening.
Yeah.
So Abby does two programs. Abby does a non-secured program to get you out of debt. And that is a domino effect. So Abby ranks highest interest to lowest interest, puts minimal payments on all of them, and then takes, a minimum of $100 out of your non-discretionary spending
Mhm.
and starts to apply that. Pay that one off, then take the minimum plus that, pay it off. But if you own a home, then Abby will use what's called consumption smoothing. That's Nobel-winning mathematics. That was used like Fortune 500 companies in the 70s. And I had a great talk with a professor at the University of York a while back. He said, if you can implement this, nobody does this. So we did. And so we re-amortize your mortgage and we get the smallest payment possible over that period of time. And all that money that's saved then goes into those priorities. And so if you're going to end up spending two or 300,000, 400,000, right, whatever it is, dollars, US, Canadian, pounds over a lifetime on debt, and that then gets put into the capital markets, that is massive. And so when we actually do an Avi plan, we show you before and after of net worth. So you actually know the impact of the plan,
Mhm.
which is incredible. And so when we say to you, you're going to get 80% percentile here, 78% percentile here, 92 percentile on this priority, that takes into account the debt elimination. And then you as a consumer have to say, do I want to keep spending frivolously or do I want to spend on what matters? And this is so important. And then I love the fact that predictively we can help the youth. So we're in talks right now in ministers of education here in Canada and to the
Mhm.
federal government in some aspects because home economics that you have, I believe, in the UK should not be about sewing and baking bread. It should be learning personal economics. So what what am I going to do with my money at what job position? So you go in and there's a tab to look at different jobs and the impact. So you can say, like, give me an example. If you're going to be a dev, right? A computer science guy, you get an offer for Silicon Valley. Well, that's great, but that's the highest standard of living in the world. So
Mhm.
is your $120,000 as a brand new, right, engineer, is it going to be great living there? Or should you take a $90,000 job, say, somewhere else and have a higher standard of living and have the highest ratio of buying a home and doing the things that you need versus renting a shoebox in the valley and doing that, right? So these are decisions that people need to know about. But I love the fact if you're in high school, you can say, well, I'm going to be an electrician or a plumber.
Mhm.
And then you get to see, here's what you're going to be paid. Here's your financial plan as an apprentice. Here you are as a journeyman. Here you are, the expectation. And so here we use Stats Canada. In the States, we use the statistical right side of labor and statistics. And we can pull this data. And so we have a lab
Yeah.
that we have built so we can run tens of thousands of people and publish those actual stats. So we just ran teachers, police officers, and nurses, 6,000 of them. So we found that 40% of them could buy a home worth $40,000 Canadian in their first 5 years working with a 20% down payment. There's an upside of using Abby. The downside was we found out that about 45 to 50% were too frivolous with their money, had carried too much debt, and could end up seeing a trustee in the next 60 months. So, as negative that sounds, the positive was Abby increased the burn rate to about 8 to 10 years to fix the problem,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, I relate that as to medical. Look, if you had a cancer and you had a treatment, and that treatment was going to get you right cancer free in X amount of time versus succumbing to it, you'd want to get treatment.
Yeah.
And so now we've just added the new pension module, so we'll be able to redefine it. So we are going to publish this
Mhm.
because I'm very fortunate. I work with devs that are either have been computer science Olympiads. My co-founder is a neural IPS recipient on large
Oh,
language Yeah, he is a personality with the. Well, he's doing his PhD, and Google's got him for being a researcher right now for 4 months coming up in New York City.
amazing.
And so, very fortunate. You just have to look at who those people are. Um,
Yeah.
I've got a previous dean of mathematics with me
Hmm.
as my advisory board persona on the chair. So I'm very blessed with the people I work with. And I'm actually Henry Ford, right? I'm not the guy that knows all the things that need to know. I know my industry,
Yes.
know what needs to be built,
Hmm.
but I'm leveraged to these incredibly beautiful minds who look at this and say, here's how we need to create this. Here's how we get zero hallucinations on a chat model. Here's how we create a tree variant, right, in order to run multiple simulations. So I feel so fortunate, so blessed in my life to be working with such a great team and having
Absolutely.
Abby that, and Wealthy Planet stands for taking the technology worldwide. It's modular. And so therefore, we just registered our company in Delaware. So the US is the next aspect. Florida and Texas are the first two states. And we just need to tax optimize those states.
Mhm.
And Abby is ready to go.
Perfect. I really like the socioeconomic benefits as well that and I feel like that's part of your personality, that's part of your character, and that somehow is being reflective in the product in Abby Assistant as well. I really liked how you spoke about students, and your ambition to go further beyond just corporations and you know people who are early on in their careers as well. So how do you where does that thinking come from, and is that something you take with you in every project or any mission that you
So,
have?
yeah, two things. Number one, I have Cyrus Mystery of Google. who was
Mhm.
part of creating $8.5 billion of Google equity, is on the advisory board. He's a product guy, and part of his world was creating and working with Google, specifically in the educational world.
Mhm.
And so the Chromebook specifically.
Yeah.
But I have 4 children and saw them go through high school, talk to some career planning personas in those high schools. And I'm like, these kids aren't getting what they need. No disrespect, but there's no tools out there.
Yeah.
Like, you have a better chance of having a complete successful world as an electrician than you do a lawyer. There'll
Mhm.
be more disruption from the legal aspect of large language models than there will be to an electrician in the next 60 months. That's not me saying it. You can go research that. That's everybody saying it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important while kids are at school that they get to define. Look how many kids finish university. And I've got nothing wrong with liberal arts programs, but I've met more baristas with a liberal arts degree than you can shake a finger at. And that's because nobody fought for them, said no to them. Nobody said, here's what you're going to get if you get that, right? Now, I'm not saying that you go into teaching it, but how many of them actually did that?
Mhm.
So I'm not anti-liberal arts in any way. I'm
Yeah.
just saying if the market says you're only going to make X amount of money, then you should be planning your life based upon that. And maybe, just maybe, you should make a pivot before you waste 4 years and $50,000 or $100,000 or get a degree that's going to be completely disrupted by large language models in the AI world, and it's not me saying it, like watch some news, watch some
It's already
podcasts.
happening. It's already happening. I think it's,
Absolutely, right? I
yeah.
mean, so that's why I think it's so important to to for the youth generation, and I say, at least grade 10 upwards. But I believe, that kids should start looking at what they're going to be like. They all have dreams and aspirations. When young boys want to be firefighters, astronauts, whatever it is. Young ladies want to be whatever it is, right? But my point being specifically this: if you had a tool, right, and then you were coached by your teachers, your guidance counselors to say, hey, you know what? You make the threshold from an academic standpoint. You can continue on this program with this tool and look that way. Or, hey, you know what? Academically, it doesn't look like you're going to be a physicist or whatever, that role is. You're going to either have to work much more harder or
Mhm.
or this, right? So what are your aspirations? What are your priorities? Oh, my priorities are to buy a house, get married, have children, whatever. Oh, great. Then you
Mhm.
should be looking at this aspect. Let's use Abby and let's see predictively what your life is going to look like, right?
Yeah.
Versus go through all these years of school
Yeah.
and then, hit the proverbial wall
Mhm.
and then have to, make some sort of, pivot at that point. No, you should be
Yeah.
pivoting as life moves forward. If the, like in business, for me, it sounds like this. If 90% of the world have never had a pizza before, then I come from an Italian, half of my family, I'd be in the pizza business.
Yeah.
But I have 90% of the world facing economic ruin because of financial duress and in relationship to wellness. So that's why I created with my team and our co-founders an ability to address that from a market side. And our ethos is righteous. Like when we work with the B2C side and we give the choice to companies, employers, we want to ensure that every product that you look at is the lowest cost in market. I believe there's a way to create a community driven membership where we can go to auto and home insurance. We can go to, the insurance life underwriting side and we can say, look, we don't require that revenue. Our membership scales for that. We want you to give us those products with a lower cost revenue because we'd like to optimize those dollars in the marketplace. And we'd like to do that in every single potential affinity available to where a consumer spends a dollar. Remember that old cliche that if you save your cents, they add up to dollars and dollars make sense? Well, that should be the optimization of every dollar. And I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey.
Mhm.
He's got like 8.5 million followers, and they're big budget guys, and they have a big budget program.
Mhm.
But I think the financial plan should be attached to the budget side and the optimization made so that you have the foresight, right, and the predictability to know, because depression comes when you lose control.
Mhm.
That's the essence of depression.
Yeah.
You lost control and you go into darkness, right? Well, if you have complete understanding,
Mhm.
then there's hope and that light, then you don't have to deal with the darkness, because I'm not making that decision. Take the matrix, right? Cause and effect, right? Now, if you still make that decision, well, then for the first time, it's on you, right? And that's different. Then you have to take responsibility,
Mhm.
pivot, say, I'm not going to do that anymore, and listen to Abby, and then use Abby as your navigational tool and decision making hub.
I want to talk a little bit about, you spoke about depression, the cause of effect, and I want to talk about your B2B corporate pivot as well. I believe you started, Wealthy Planning started as a consumer app, but,
Oops.
you know, and then made a big pivot into selling to corporations as an employee benefit. What
Are you
triggered that
there?
decision, and was it a difficult call to make, and how have you come across any sort of friction? Because having been an employee in a large organizations, big companies as well, I've always found that financial discussions, personal finance is not something that everybody can comfortably talk to their bosses or their colleagues about.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Yeah.
times companies, defer from that conversation directly because of the conflict.
So the pivot was really easy. I've been to a couple tech conferences, saw some companies who were in the wellness space, saw that they had very little value. Not that it just, I was like, I'm a
Yeah,
financial
yeah. Let's just
background.
not name names.
I'm not. No, no, no. And I was like,
But I
yeah. But my
completely
point is,
agree.
if a bank is going
Yeah.
to give you the same tool you're trying to sell as a SaaS model out there, at the end of the day, you're going to save that money. So I
Yeah.
took a look at that and went, oh my God, there's this massive TAM.
Hmm.
Then I started to research top 10 companies US, top 10 companies UK, top 10 companies EU, top 10 companies. I was like, none of these companies are doing what we do.
Hmm.
None of them. Like, it's like get a better beacon score, or some budgeting format or this or that. And then I was looking at, like, the engagement from the employee to the benefits sucked. It's like, oh, we're doing a seminar. And it was like below 40% engagement because it wasn't answering the questions, right? So we created Abby so that we give the employer a dashboard, but the actual employee's data never reaches the employer. So we can say in the dashboard to the employer, in the first 90, and here's what we do. We do a pilot first. So we take X amount of new employees, X amount of mid employees, and X amount of exiting employees. And we run them all Abby plans. And then we ask them if they'd like to be recorded, not with their data, just the experience. And it's like, hey, I'm John. This is my wife, Mary. We've been in major banks. We had a financial planner. Abby made a $700,000 difference. Holy crap. We can't believe our life is finally on track, whatever. So the dashboard says to the employer, 28% of your company is onboarded in the first 60 days. Of that 28%, 22% are actively reducing debt. 91% have engaged retirement. And then that comes out to them every month, right? So that is a great insight to, or we'll say, 800 Abby chat conversation happened in the last 30 days. That's
Hmm.
people speaking, because people have this inert fear or embarrassment or pride. They don't want the world to know. They're so busy keeping up with the Joneses and all that other
Yeah.
stuff. They're too, it's all being held, right? Like
Yeah.
poker to their chest. And so, talking to Abby, or one of our money coaches, we have that bridge, who are non-commissioned, by the way, they just feel more secure. And so this is a better way of doing it. And once they know their employers are out of the loop on the data,
Yeah.
and just remember, they're all going to HR saying, I need help,
Yeah.
and so I just want to bring it back to one of our first conversations. This company I spoke about was researched for 2 years for non-biased, and
Hmm.
it wasn't for a large language model, right? And I mentioned it, Gemini Copilot, they would have never found us. right?
Yeah.
They would never found us. And I believe that's the new world of the SEO order, right? So that if you're in a business right now, you want to market and you're not getting an SEO conversion rate because you're not being brought up by ChatGPT or Grok
Yeah.
or Copilot, all these companies out there. Well, then, man, you know, you got a landline phone, everybody else on a cell phone right now. You got to get involved in that and use that prospectively for marketing. And that's
Yeah.
the new world order of it. So that's how I feel about the pivot we did, and I'm excited about it because we're being found out.
Yeah.
Like we post very little in the last 60 days on LinkedIn,
Mm.
but the searches have been astronomical. And so now it's like, so now we're going to have some great data to send out, and we can engage unions, we can engage companies, and now we can engage federal, provincial, municipal governments, run
Mhm.
their people. We don't need their permission. It's a Stats Canada forum.
Yeah.
And it's the data that's already been collected, and say, hey,
Mhm.
here's what's going on. Here's
Yeah.
the choices you can give people. And as we grow that and we throw that out onto social media, sooner or later, somebody from HR goes, holy smokes, we
Yeah.
didn't even know you guys are around. So that's
Mhm.
that's the essence, right? So sometimes the market's not ready.
Yeah.
Sometimes the market's ready. And I remember hearing from a gentleman who was a president at Citigroup at the time I was there. And somebody asked that gentleman, and he's now a CEO of one of the biggest, right, wealth management companies in the world. And they asked him, they said, how do you buy a stock? I think was the question. And he said, well, timing is everything, right? The
Mm.
widget might not be perfect, but the timing and demand for market. And so that's how we feel, that the market is just becoming relevant for us, and now everybody's researching it, and
Mhm.
we look like the golden tool because of that, and we are, right, like we
Absolutely.
completely did something different.
Yeah. On to my second question as well. Just wanted to see, the skepticism. Do you come across that and generally from like let's say the C-suite, CFOs, where businesses feel like, okay, the personal finance is not our problem of our employees.
Well, they can't
I mean,
ignore
that
it.
thinking still like prevails.
So here's then so we know this in Canada alone, 70%. Now that's listen, 70% of Canadian employees expect their employer to help them with financial stress and financial wellness. So, in the mass majority of company, there are already wellness dollars sitting there. So it's not like they have any major pivot, right? It's just like maybe it's being spent on massages or whatever else, but the
Yeah.
core root of the problem that's causing the stress, that's causing the physiological damage and stress to get the massage happens to be financial stress and wellness. Let's attack that. So the dollars are out there in the wellness programs to pay for it. So I think every time you put your HR people to a conference, it's in their face.
Mhm.
It's not like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's now, if you're a CEO and you're a CFO and you're a head of HR, you have no
Mhm.
choice but to have a look at this. And then you have to make decisions based upon what is specifically going to change the direction of that employee and provide that wellness. Well,
Yeah.
their happiness is related to how they prioritize their money, and that's how Abby was recreated. They don't want to go to a seminar. They don't want to watch videos. They want it personal. How are you
Mhm.
personally going to change my life?
Absolutely. That's a really good point. And on on that point, I wanted to, what's your take on, so far the people who've used your Abby Assistant, what's the hardest belief about money that people need to unlearn before they can actually make progress?
So that they can't believe that they can have that change in their life, right? So you have to remember that literacy in money is an all-time low.
Yeah.
Specifically, in middle income markets.
Hmm.
Most of them do not even understand the compounding values. So, we teach the Rule 72. Abby Chat's got 600 plus questions answered
Hmm.
that are for our world CRA. So that's Custom Revenue Agency Canada. So it's directly from Inarguable.
Yeah.
And so they just don't believe after suffering so long that they could have a great life.
Hmm.
Second thing is they, a lot of them don't want to give up the fluff to have that great life. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. If you have these priorities and the only way of you achieving them is not going to that barista every day and dropping $15 just per se,
Yeah.
right? And so that $15, is like $90 a week. It's 180. It's 360 a month. Watch this. If you're 30 years old and you only save $250 and you put in the S&P 500, by the time that you're 60, that's $1.5 million.
Hmm.
If you count for inflation, that's still almost $600,000 to you. That's the kind of thinking you need. Like, make your coffee at work, make your coffee at home. Don't go out for lunches. And I'm sure the restaurant world doesn't want to hear this and the barista world doesn't want to hear this. But look, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Depression? Sleepless
Hmm.
nights? Like, like there's no secret way to win once you have the
Hmm.
plan. You either have to increase your income if you're not going to be able to do it. So what does that mean? Side hustle,
Hmm.
right? Or getting a promotion you have no control on, getting a cost of living which you don't normally control, that's your union, or you need to cut back effectively. So I had a client literally about to be bankrupt,
Hmm.
said to this husband and wife, what's the number one priority you can't live without? They said owning a home. I said, this is not going to be easy. I said, you can't do it the way it's set up. I go, you have an electric car. Why don't you become an Uber driver or Uber Eats or something like that? And, to the spouse, why don't you get it? So long story short, they needed an extra $600. Now they're taking in an extra $1,600 a month and they'll be out of debt. Watch this, in 40 months, and they'll have a down payment, 20% of their first home purchase inside of 60 months. They are so happy, right? They did a testimonial recording with us. That's the kind of talk people need. You're not going to get that talk at the bank. Your
Hmm.
financial planner is not going to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
Okay. This is like raw mathematics,
Hmm.
cause and effect. And look, you can't escape it. The great thing is you can escape the past by focusing on a better future, but you're going to make those tough decisions
Hmm.
and they're mathematical decisions.
Yeah.
So step up, be that man, be that woman that you're capable of being. Stop comparing to the Joneses. Stop thinking you'd have things.
Hmm.
Your house is full of useless things.
Yeah.
And say, look, I don't care if it's travel. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter to me if you want to spend 15 grand a month on travel, but that's the priority in which you give up the other things so you get to have those memories and travel. That's what I'm getting at.
Understood. So there's a lot of optimism, and I do agree with you that, the timing feels right where the world's going in terms of we're living in an AI era as well. But if you have to talk about any challenge your business is facing or would like to overcome in the next 6, 12 months, what would you see that to, achieve your goals of expanding globally to get to the,
So
you know,
I am super, super blessed. Thank you, God, and my Savior. My only issue is completing the financing rounds.
mm-hmm,
Look, I'm almost embarrassed to say this. We did social media campaigns, and for including the cost of the person doing it, we were under $1,000 a month, and these were not what I call BS impressions.
hmm,
These were 50, 60,000 a month impressions to convert.
yeah,
Okay, so like I said, market and what you do, like we have the Abbey Challenge.
hmm,
Don't believe us. Do a 30-day free trial. If we don't make a difference of tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of dollars to you, then great. You
hmm,
lost nothing. But we
yeah,
already know the
hmm,
answer to that. So
hmm,
as we roll out this communication, right, this broadcasting, the social media side, the SEO, and the large language model world. So for me, it has been I've raised over $4 million of capital to build this, far under anybody in PitchBook that's built anything like this. Like, this is a major build, right?
hmm,
This is not a layered, thing out there. This is true IP.
yeah.
And so we built this, and so now I've got a seed round running in the U.S. market and a seed round running in Canada. We license our program to the U.S. company, and that's how things are going to work out. We're going to do the heavy lifting in Canada because we get gazillions of dollars in grants.
Mhm.
We are deep, if you will, tech country.
Yes.
So deep tech, and we'll do a lot of the U.S. UX UI side in the U.S.
Mhm.
So we have some major announcements coming out.
Mhm.
What I kind of alluded to.
Yeah.
We now have companies coming to us. So before it was like you don't have the traction, you don't have the traction. It was driving me nuts because nobody was looking at the technology in the market, right? And so now we have this lab that says pre-traction, here's what we're going to do. And now we have these companies. We've got some companies from the institutional side looking to license Abby. And so I think we're going to look like this company that came out of nowhere. And
Hopefully,
so
yeah.
that's been the issue. That's been the only issue. Scaling of our technology. We're so blessed. We work with a great team out of Waterloo. We
Mhm.
use Waterloo interns. If you're not familiar with Waterloo University,
Of
probably
course.
the most
Yeah.
premier company in Canada, if not one of the top three in the world in computer science, mathematics,
Hmm.
from that
Yeah.
perspective, right up there with Stanford. Um, and so big connection there. Now we have a great connection with the University of Toronto. And so their
Hmm.
master's PhD program for AI is massive. Our co-founder is going through his master's PhD over there. So very fortunate from that standpoint. Kubernetes effect is in place when it comes to scaling. Everything else has been done. I've been very blessed with very bright people who have done it. So what I'm doing is just, I can take a look at you and say, I'm a slam dunk 10 to 15 times post this seed round. As I consider the other round, even though one family office was in for over $1 million, more of a friends and family round. But this round could be a 10 to 15 times in the next
Hmm.
12 months, because we've already done all the hard work, right? So that's the only thing that we need. And we'll engage and test different marketing programs,
Hmm.
different AI agents that we've looked at, but a lot of people come to us and they're so antiquated, right? It's like, oh, we want to do a mass, email campaign outgoing. It's like, buddy, you missed the race.
Yeah.
The horses are rounding the first bend, and you're way back over there.
Yeah.
And not that I don't think that's effective, but so
Hmm.
much new stuff is out there. And then, we'll look for a champion. We'll throw some money to some
Hmm.
different programs out there, and we'll see how they do. And then we'll be able to pick, But I'll tell you what makes Abby in our world so different. Most people, and I'm going to say 95% of the market, can't use a testimony very well because either the product is not, it's not really a testimonial product.
Yeah.
Okay. Or the value proposition doesn't match the testimony, right? So let me give you an example. Um, you could be buying the greatest widget in the world, but that widget is outpriced in the marketplace,
Hmm.
and you could say you have testimonies for that, but people can't afford it anyways,
Yeah.
right? So for me, 1 in 5 onboarding is recording a testimony. So then we can take those testimonies, we can get granular right down to postal code, and it could be, I'm Shiraz and my wife, right? And we live in this area of Alberta. You know, this is what we used to live like. This is where we live now with Abby. We have control. And then people looking at people just like them, it's relationship already created. And
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, they're going to say this: we should give Abby a try. So I call the institutions Goliath. I call us David. And I asked the world to become a David with us,
Yeah.
right? And let's become this ethos, this membership driven world, right? I don't believe in SaaS. We're membership because we have an ethos,
Hmm.
and we'll attract and work with other companies. And so yes, we make some referral fees, but we ensure that the cost is less with us than it would have been otherwise. So it's win-win.
Absolutely. Well, I know we're short on time, but
Yeah,
I
I got a
don't
hard
want
stop
to.
coming up here in like 5 minutes.
Okay, but I don't want to let you go without your background, your story. I
Sure.
want you to talk a little bit about Abby and Wealthy Planet because, that is something that you're promoting at this point. But what I really found interesting is your journey throughout the last, how your career started, as I believe you were a military medic in the Canadian Armed Forces. How did
So
How did
Yeah,
you come across here? And I know we're short on time, but if you could briefly.
I can give you just a high level. So I
Yes.
think as an army medic specifically, you have a level of empathy. Your job is to go out there on the front lines with trauma medicine and save
Yeah.
lives, right?
Mhm.
Get them to dust off and get them right out of that theater of war and get them back, to at least a
Mhm.
brigade medical station and then back obviously to that hospital. Um, then while being deployed, it was actually a NATO deployment.
Mhm.
I got completely ripped off of finance. Then I did my study, and I knew nobody was going to study all those books I did. So I started giving advice for free. And then I became a licensed person. So I got a securities license and I started, I replaced my military income very quickly. And then from there, I became a branch manager. And from there, a regional and then a
Yeah.
senior VP. And the more I worked within the industry, the more I realized that the 80-20 rule wasn't working well. Like 20% of the business gets done,
Mhm.
right? Or 80% of the business gets done by 20% of the people.
Yeah.
And I was just saying that like it's not happening, right? People don't want to prospect, people want to do this. I'm not an adult daycare center. I don't want to be, around all these people trying to motivate them if they can't be self-motivated. And then my aha moment came in a company which I was running on my own. I started it up and we just called it business back then. It was pre-startup world.
Yeah.
'03, we built our first software. '05, I had about 600 advisors, 40, 50 independent offices right across the country. And we called that technology the bridge. The client was able to go on it, right? The advisor and then the third party, should that be mortgage slash whatever was on it. And so I saw the beginnings pre AI,
Mhm.
the empowerment here. And so I saw that we were changing that 80-20 rule to a 60-40 rule.
Mhm.
So 40% was now doing the work of the 80. And then, my wife said to me, someday we'll be able to do that without advisors. And so we launched our company and we began with, okay, what if the pre AI, what if we built a spreadsheet base and then coded it and people could just onboard and do their
Yeah.
plan. And then through COVID, everything turned to crap,
Mhm.
and left our office, became digital.
Yeah.
But post COVID, I got to meet Andre Merceno, who's my co-founder, and
Mhm.
gave me a complete different understanding. Vector Institute senior researcher had done his, had been to NVIDIA and does an internship there. Neuralips recipient on large language model safety, and said, John, we need to build an optimization environment. And I totally bought into it. So I was describing the problem, he was describing the solution, and then it just meshed from there. And that's how the pivot to AI happened. That's how Abby happened.
Very interesting. Well, look, John, this has been a really eye-opening conversation. The idea that financial stress isn't a personal problem, it's a corporate one. I think that reframe alone is worth the whole episode. Thank you for your time, for your transparency, and for the work that you're doing. We'll make sure that all the links to Wealthy Planet and Abby are in the show notes for everyone and anyone who wants to take that first step. It was a pleasure talking to you and all the best.
Oh, likewise. Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you so much.